What's going on, guys? Aero here, and guys, one of the most exciting questions for any Pokemon fan is predicting what the next Pokemon games are going to be, and that's what I want to talk with you guys about today. But just as a friendly reminder before this video begins, this doesn't mean that I am done or over with Pokemon Sun and Moon, because in fact it's quite the opposite. Alright, I'm still very excited for Pokemon Sun and Moon. These games are still the games I'm most hyped for this whole year. I definitely am still really into Pokemon Sun and Moon, so don't get the idea that I'm done with Pokemon Sun and Moon and I'm moving on. This is just a curious question that I wanted to talk with you guys about today. But now that we got that over with, let's talk about what the next games after Pokemon Sun and Moon might be. So a lot of people are thinking about what the next games after Pokemon Sun and Moon could be. And even though Pokemon Sun and Moon aren't even out yet, I think it was kind of fun to predict what the next Pokemon games might be also. So first thing that I want to talk with you guys about is we already know that usually when we get a new generation, we get the main games that come with the new generation, and then we get the main remakes that come afterwards. And that's pretty much how it's always been with Game Freak. You know, after the third generation, that's pretty much how it's always been. You know, third generation, we got our new games and we got our remakes. Then we moved on to fourth generation, we got our new games and we got our remakes. The fifth gen is the only one that's the odd one out here, guys, because it's really weird how we got the new generation, but then the next games we got were just pretty much games of the new generation. They were just like sequels to that. So this is the only oddball out here, but the only one that doesn't kind of fit is Generation 5, because we didn't get a remake. We just got a new generation and then we got a remake of Gen 5 basically. And then, you know, once we get back to Gen 6, though, it's the same thing. We got our new games, and then we got our remakes. So it's pretty safe to assume that, you know, besides, you know, the fifth generation, which is that odd one out, all the generations pretty much have their new games, and then they have their remakes. So if we're starting a new generation right now with Sun and Moon, we can probably expect to see some remakes coming afterward, and that's what a lot of people are predicting. So today I want to talk with you guys about what games we could possibly see come after Sun and Moon. The big games that a lot of people are talking about are going to be most likely Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes, and there's also a few other games that I wanted to talk with you guys about as well. So Diamond and Pearl remakes are pretty much the big one that everyone is thinking, and afterward we also have Pokemon Red and Blue remakes, possibly because we don't have those games on our 3DSs. You know, I mentioned that in a video a while ago. I talked about how we can't get any 3DS games on like the Kanto region. Like I could play any region I want, you know, on my DS except for Kanto. But I think Game Freak's not going to give us a Kanto remake or like a Kanto game on the 3DS, because they already gave us those eShop games that came out on like the 20th anniversary. They came out back in like February. We got Red, Blue, and Yellow on the eShop. So I think that's kind of Game Freak's way of giving us Kanto. And I mean, we can transfer the Pokemon from, you know, those games into Sun and Moon anyway. So I think that's sort of Game Freak's way of giving us the Kanto region. But I definitely do think that the next games are going to be Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes. And a lot of people were talking about how there's already a bunch of hints and things that could possibly lead us to thinking about what Diamond and Pearl remakes, like hints as to how Diamond and Pearl remakes could come. And so the thing I want to talk to you guys about is this image right here of the Alola region. And so some person basically looked through the Alola region and found 3 of the most important landmarks, and they were talking about how you can see at that little dock over there on the side, which is Pearl Harbor, and then the little mountain or like volcano shaped like crater is basically Diamond Head. And you know, if you guys don't see that reference right there, it's called Pearl Harbor and Diamond Head. So that's leading a lot of people to think that, you know, it's going to be Diamond and Pearl remakes that are coming next. Now, please, you guys got to keep in mind though, these are just names. Like, names can't tell you if a game's going to come out next. You know, it's just a coincidence that Pearl Harbor and Diamond Head have those names. Like, you know, you can't just change the name of the actual like landmark. So I don't think that gives you a hint as to Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes coming out next. But I think what's important is that Game Freak always gives us hints in you know, Pokemon games as to what games are coming next. And I mean, you can argue as much as you want that they're just like coincidences, but they're definitely hints that Game Freak puts in there. I mean, Pokemon X and Y gave us hints as to Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire a lot, because you can see, you know, there's one spot where like a person talks about like there's a hot spring next to a Pokemon Center where, you know, they came from, and you know, it's pretty obvious they're talking about Lava Ridge Town, because you know, you played it in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It's that town with like the hot spring next to it, and you know, Flannery and the fire type gym in there. So yeah, it's definitely you know, a hint that, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were going to come out, or Hoenn games were going to come out next. There was also another spot in X and Y where it was talking about how this couple was saying that the 40th wedding anniversary is the Ruby anniversary, and the 45th one is the Sapphire. And once again, they're mentioning Ruby and Sapphire. So, they're just giving you guys little hints as to Hoenn Remakes coming out next. I mean, a lot of people are even believing that, Pokemon X and Y gave us hints to Pokemon Sun and Moon coming out, because if you remember, like, in Anastar City, that big, like, Megastone, like, finder thing that would glow up at, at night, to help you find the Megastones, there was, that thing was, I think, called the Sundial or something like that. And then, there was like a Hex Maniac talking about how, did you know that there are moon dials too? So, it's talking about, the sun and the moon. So a lot of people are thinking that that could mean that, Sun and Moon was hinted in Pokemon X and Y as well. So yeah, that's what a lot of people are thinking of. Now, I think that what we need to do is Pearl Harbor and Diamond Head are very, like, two names that are going to be very important if Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes are coming out next. So what we need to do is, when we get these games, Sun and Moon, when we go to those areas in the actual game, Pearl Harbor and Diamond Head Volcano, I mean, I'm sure that they're not going to be called that in the actual games, but like when we go to those areas like that would appear in real life, we need to pay attention to the quotes that come around in that area. Like, everything that the people say, and like, all the things that people say in houses and just people that are in the towns, we need to pay close attention, because if any of them mention like references to Sinnoh, or just like where I come from, there was like Snow Point City or something, I don't know, if they mention anything about Sinnoh, we can get a good idea that Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes are a very likely possibility. And that's what they did in Pokemon X and Y. All those Hoenn remakes were, definitely, we could definitely predict them coming, because of how, they were giving us all those Hoenn references. Someone even found the Mega Latios within the game files that wasn't supposed to be in Pokemon X and Y. So we were getting all of these hints, and one of the biggest ones was Mega Blaziken, which was shown to us in Pokemon X and Y. And in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the whole trio got their Mega Evolutions, but in X and Y, it was only Blaziken. And obviously, Game Freak can't show favoritism towards a certain starter, so it seemed pretty fishy anyway how Blaziken was like special and got its own Mega Evolution, but Sceptile and Swampert didn't get their evolutions. So, I mean, that's definitely a thing like that too. So if we get some sort of like hint like that as well in Pokemon Sun and Moon, like, if they do something like, if you've seen my last video, I was talking about those diamonds and what they could possibly mean. Now, I don't know if that's going to be like replacing Mega Evolutions. I sure hope not. But if it is replacing Mega Evolutions, whatever that new feature is, if they do something where they, give it exclusively to one of the, Sinnoh starters, then that's a really big hint that, it's that Diamond and Pearl remakes could be coming out next. And you guys got to be honest, Diamond and Pearl remakes, just thinking about them, that those are going to be pretty cool. I mean, I can't wait to go back to Diamond and Pearl, back to the Sinnoh region. I mean, it was actually one of my most favorite regions. I was actually, the first Pokemon game that I ever got on the DS was Pokemon Platinum. I didn't even play Diamond and Pearl, I just got Platinum. And yeah, it was a really fun game for me, and I really enjoyed it. So I would love to see Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes. And so I think the big things that we need to think about are, if we see, we already know that, Diamond Head Volcano and Pearl Harbor are going to be in Pokemon Sun and Moon. So the big thing we need to think about is anything, in those areas, whatever the people say, if there's any like relationships to Sinnoh, or like flashbacks, or like any sort of hints into the Sinnoh region in those areas, that's a big clue right there. The next thing you need to think about is just if anything exclusive is given to Sinnoh Pokemon, like whatever that new feature might be, if something like that is given to only like Infernape or Empoleon or Torterra or one of them, that's a big feature as well. And another thing that you need to think about is the Pokédex, because the Pokédex is actually a really important thing to determine another game that's going to come out as well. And so some of you may not know how this works, but basically, there's people that, there's different types of Pokemon players, and one of the Pokemon player types is obviously the one who wants to complete the Pokedex. And so these types of players always look around, and throughout the whole game they try to find every single Pokemon that they possibly can. And if you guys play Pokemon X and Y, you know that a lot of the Hoenn Pokemon that you were looking for in Pokemon X and Y were missing. And I mean, if you don't see that, definitely look back in your Pokemon X and Y game right now and tell me. You're gonna see that if you look through the Kalos Pokédex, a lot of the Hoenn Pokemon are missing. And the reason they did that was because all of those Pokemon could be found in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And so they didn't want to give like a whole bunch of Pokemon like Shroomish and stuff like that in Pokemon X and Y, because to have it come out already in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So that's why they kept some of those Pokemon from the Hoenn region out, so that when you got Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you could catch those remaining Pokemon and then just put them in with your X and Y and have a better chance at completing the Pokédex. So I think that's a big feature to look out for in Pokemon Sun and Moon as well. When you get that Alola Pokédex, make sure, see if any of the Sinnoh Pokemon are missing. If we see a lot of Sinnoh Pokemon missing, then that could give us a good idea as to what Pokemon games could be coming out next. Most likely going to be Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes, which would be really amazing. So yeah, guys, that's all I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Definitely let me know in the comments down below. Would you like to see Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes? Would you just like to see another new region? What Pokemon games would you like to see after Pokemon Sun and Moon? And remember, guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click that like button, and it really does help me out. And if you like Pokemon like I do, be sure to click that subscribe button to get more Pokemon content on this channel and just stay up to date on other things Nintendo as well. Thank you so much for watching.